Guns and munition wagons are moving along a crossroad. The backs of the horses shine in the moonlight. Their movements are beautiful. They toss their heads and their eyes gleam. The guns and the wagons float past the dim background of the moonlit landscape. The riders in their steel helmets resemble knights of a forgotten time. It is strangely beautiful and arresting. We push on to the pioneer dump. Some of us load our shoulders with pointed and twisted iron stakes. Others thrust smooth iron rods through rolls of wire and go off with them. The burdens are awkward and heavy. The ground becomes more broken. From ahead come the warnings. Look out, deep shell hole on the left, mined trenches. Our eyes peer out. Our feet and our sticks feel in front of us before they take the weight of the body. Suddenly, the line halts. I bump my face against the roll of wire carried by the man in front and curse. There are some shell-smashed lorries in the road. Another order, cigarettes and pipes out. We are near the line. In the meantime, it has become pitch dark. We skirt a small wood, and then we have the front line immediately before us. An uncertain red glow spreads across the skyline from one to the other. It is in perpetual movement, punctuated with the bursts of flame from the nozzles of the batteries. Balls of light rise up high above it, silver and red spheres which explode and rain down in showers of red, white, and green stars. French rockets go up, which unfold a sick parachute into the air and drift slowly down. They light up everything as bright as day. Their light shines on us, and we see our shadows sharply outlined on the ground. They hover for the space of a minute before they burn out. Immediately, fresh ones shoot up in the sky. Again, red, green, and blue stars. Bombardment, says Kat. The thunder of the guns swells to a heavy roar and then breaks up again into separate explosions. The dry bursts of the machine guns rattle. Above us, the air teems with invisible swift movements, with howls, pipings, and hisses. They are smaller shells, and amongst them, booming through the night like an organ, go the great coal boxes and the heavies. They have a hoarse, distant bellow like a rutting stag and make their way high above the howl and whistle of the smaller shells. It reminds me of a flock of wild geese when I hear them. Last autumn, the wild geese flew day after day across the path of the shells. The searchlights begin to sweep the dark sky. They slide along it like gigantic tapering rulers. One of them pauses and quivers a little. Immediately, a second is beside him. A black insect is caught between them and tries to escape. The airman. He hesitates, is blinded, and falls. At regular intervals, we ram in the iron stakes. Two men hold a roll, and the others spool off the barbed wire. It is that awful stuff with close-set long spikes. I am not used to unrolling it and tear my hand. After a few hours, it is done. But there is still some time before the lorries come. Most of us lie down and sleep. I try also, but it has turned too chilly. We know we are not far from the sea because we are constantly waked by the cold. Once I fall fast asleep. Then, awakening suddenly with the start, I do not know where I am. I see the stars, I see the rockets, and for a moment I have the impression that I have fallen asleep at a garden fete. I don't know whether it is morning or evening. I lie in the pale cradle of the twilight and listen for soft words which will come, soft and near. Am I crying? I put my hand to my eyes. It is so fantastic. Am I a child? Smooth skin. It lasts only a second. Then I recognize the silhouette of Kaczynski. The old veteran, he sits quietly and smokes his pipe, a covered pipe, of course. When he sees I am awake, he says, "That gave you a fright? It was only a nose cap. It landed in the bushes over there." I sit up. I feel myself strangely alone. It's good Kat is there. He gazes thoughtfully at the front and says, "Mighty fine fireworks if they weren't so dangerous." One lands behind us. Some recruits jump up terrified. A couple of minutes later, another one comes over, nearer this time. Kat knocks out his pipe. We're in for it. Then it begins in earnest. We crawl away as well as we can in our haste. The next lands fair among us. Two fellows cry out. Green rockets shoot up on the skyline. Barrage. The mud flies high. Fragments whiz past. The crack of the guns is heard long after the roar of the explosions. Beside us lies a fair-headed recruit in utter terror. He has buried his face in his hands. His helmet has fallen off. I fish hold of it and try to put it back on his head. He looks up, pushes the helmet off, and like a child creeps under my arm, his head close to my breast. The little shoulders heave, shoulders just like Kemrick's. Let him be. So that the helmet should be of some use, I stick it on his behind, not for a jest, but out of consideration, since that is his highest part. And though there's plenty of meat there, a shot in it can be damned painful. Besides, a man has to lie for months on his belly in the hospital, and afterwards he would almost sure to have a limp. It got someone pretty badly. Cries are heard between the explosions. At last it grows quiet. The fire has lifted over us and is now dropping on the reserves. We risk a look. Red rockets shoot up to the sky. Apparently there's an attack coming. Where we are, it is still quiet. I sit up and shake the recruit by the shoulder. It's all over, kid. It's all right this time. He looks around him dazedly. You'll get used to it soon, I tell him. He sees his helmet and puts it on. Gradually, he comes to. Then suddenly, he turns fiery red and looks confused. Cautiously, he reaches his hand to his behind and looks at me dismally. I understand at once, gun-shy. It wasn't the reason I had stuck his helmet over it. That's no disgrace, I reassure him. Many's the man before you who had had his pants full after the first bombardment. Go behind that bush there and throw your underpants away. Get along. He goes off. Things become quieter, but the cries do not cease. What's up, Albert? I ask. A couple of columns over there got it in the neck. The cries continued. It is not men. They could not cry so terribly. Wounded horses, says Kat. It's unendurable. It's the moaning of the world. It is the martyred creation, wild with anguish, filled with terror and groaning. We are pale. Dietering stands up. God, for God's sake, shoot them. He is a farmer and very fond of horses. It gets under his skin. Then, as if deliberately, the fire dies down again. The screaming of the beasts become louder. One can no longer distinguish whence in this now quiet, still, silvery landscape it comes, ghostly, invisible. It is everywhere, between heaven and earth. It rolls on immeasurably. Dietering raves and yells out, shoot them, can't you? Damn you again. They must look after the men first, Kat said quietly. We stand up and try to see where it is. If we could only see the animals, we should be able to endure it better. Muller has a pair of glasses. We see a dark group, bears with stretchers, and larger black clumps moving about. Those are the wounded horses. But not all of them. Some gallop away in the distance, fall down, and then run on further. The belly of one is ripped open. The guts trail out. He becomes tangled in them and falls. Then he stands up again. Dietering raises up his gun and aims. Kat hits it in the air. Are you mad? Dietering trembles and throws his rifle on the ground. We sit down and hold our ears. But this appalling noise, these groans and screams penetrate. They penetrate everywhere. We can bear almost anything, but now the sweat breaks out on us. We must get up and run no matter where. But where these cries can no longer be heard. And it is not men, only horses. From the dark group of stretchers move off again. Then single shots crack out. The black heap convulses, then sinks down, at last. But still it is not the end. The men cannot overtake the wounded beasts which fly in their pain, their wide open mouths full of anguish. One of the men goes down on one knee, a shot. One horse drops, another. The last one props itself on its forelegs and drags itself round in a circle like a merry-go-round. Squatting, it drags round in circles on its stiffened forelegs. Apparently, its back is broken. The soldier runs up and shoots it. Slowly, humbly, it sinks to the ground. We take our hands from our ears. The cries are silenced. Only a long-drawn, dying sigh still hangs on the air. Then, only again the rockets, the singing of the shells, and the stars there, most strange. Dietering walks up and down cursing, like to know what harm they've done. He returns to it once again. His voice is agitated. It sounds almost dignified as he says, I tell you, it is the vilest baseness to use horses in war. We go back. It is time we return to the lorries. The sky has become brighter, 3 o'clock in the morning. The breeze is fresh and cool. The pale hour makes our faces look gray. We trudge onward in single file through the trenches and shell holes and come again to the zone of mist. Kaczynski is restive. That's a bad sign. What's up, Kat? Says Krop. I wish we were back home. Home, he means the huts. Soon we'll be out of it, Kat. He's nervous. I don't know. We come to the communication trench and then to the open fields. The little wood reappears. We know every foot of ground here. There's the cemetery with the mounds and the black crosses. That moment, it breaks out behind us, swells, roars, and thunders. We duck down. A cloud of flame shoots up 100 yards ahead of us. The next minute, under a second explosion, part of the wood rises slowly in the air. 3 or 4 trees sail up and then crash to pieces. The shells begin to hiss like safety valves. Heavy fire. Take cover, yells somebody. Cover! The fields are flat. The wood is too distant and dangerous. The only cover is the graveyard and the mounds. We stumble across in the dark, and as though he had been spat there, every man lies glued behind the mound. Not a moment too soon. The dark goes mad. It heaves and raves. Darknesses blacker than the night rush on us with giant strides, over us and away. The flames of the explosions light up the graveyard. There's no escape anywhere. But by the light of the shells, I try to get a view of the fields. They are a surging sea. Daggers of flame from the explosions leap up like fountains. It is impossible for anyone to break through it. The wood vanishes. It is pounded, crushed, torn to pieces. We must stay here in the graveyard. The earth bursts before us. It rains clods. I feel a smack. My sleeve is torn away by a splinter. I shut my fist. No pain. Still, that does not reassure me. Wounds don't hurt until afterwards. I feel the arm all over. It is grazed but sound. Now a crack on the skull, I begin to lose consciousness. Like lightning, the thought comes to me, don't faint. I sink down in the black broth and immediately come up to the top again. A splinter slashes into my helmet, but it has already traveled so far that it does not go through. I wipe the mud out of my eyes. A hole is torn up in the front of me. Shells hardly ever land in the same hole twice. I'll get into it. With one lunge, I shoot as flat as a fish over the ground. There it whistles again. Quickly I crouch together, claw for cover, feel something on the left, shove in beside it. It gives way. I groan. The earth leaps. The blast thunders in my ears. I creep under the yielding thing, cover myself